Hi, I'm Sal Mercogliano. Welcome to this episode of What's Going On with Shipping. Today, we're going to look at something we haven't really looked at in the past too much: drugs. And what we're talking about is drug smuggling. And we're going to specifically talk about the largest drug bust in American history on this episode of What's Going On with Shipping. I'm your host, Sal Mercogliano, chair of the History, Political Science, and Criminal Justice Department at Campbell University, former merchant mariner, and an adjunct instructor in merchant marine maritime policy at the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy. So, the largest drug bust in American history, the fourth largest drug bust in world history, all took place in 2019 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And when we think about drug busts at sea, we tend to think about several things. Back in 2019, this video came out, probably one of the best ones ever done. This is the Coast Guard boarding a narco submarine in the Pacific. Absolutely, it's fantastic. It's wonderful. If you've never seen it before, absolutely recommend you take a look at it. The Coast Guard. I always talk about the fact how the Coast Guard is without a doubt, I think, the most unrated military service there is. They're not an armed force; they're a police force. They do unheralded work, and the concept of chasing down these narco subs, and narco subs are not really true submarines. They're low visibility vessels. They have the capability to go underwater with snorkels and limited time underwater, but basically they're low profile. And this chase down of this narco sub is fantastic, not for the least of which is not only they chase it down, but one of the Coast Guardsmen jumps on board, pounds on on the hatch to make the submarine stop, and the submarine will eventually stop and get captured. You would think this is the most dramatic bust in the history of the United States, but it's not. That kind of goal goes to something else, and it involves this vessel right here, the MSC Gayane. The Gayane is a vessel of the Mediterranean Shipping Company, container ship built back in 2018, Liberian flagged. She is currently right now off the coast of Europe, heading toward Panama. But back in 2019, she was subject of an intense investigation that resulted in the arrest and subsequent prosecution of 8 crew members on board. And lo and behold, it finds out that the vessel was holding $1.3 billion worth of cocaine, 20 tons. It was a massive amount. And I have to tell you, when this story came out in 2019, I initially believed, and many people others did too, that this cocaine was shipped in the cargo containers, that it had been loaded on board in cargo containers onto the vessel, and then subsequently found out. And when this happened in 2019, the vessel was arrested. There was potential for the vessel to be seized and sold at auction for being used in a drug trafficking scheme. Not unlike when cars, vans, and boats are used in it. They were going to grab this vessel from MSC and sell it at auction as part of that. The story here by Greg Miller, excuse me, is a great one. I have to tell you, Greg really went into some in-depth here, and I want to go through some of it with you. So again, 20 tons, 8 members sentenced to lengthy prison terms. The most recent one just received it. But again, you go back to this idea, and they talk about how what everyone believed to happen was, but then they go into details here. And so 4 of the crew were recruited by a criminal organization in Montenegro, including the chief mate, second mate, an engine cadet, and electrician. The vessel was basically, they were approached outside a cafe in Montenegro by individuals who knew of the upcoming voyage. After the 4 conspirators were at sea, they used these narco phones, these encrypted phones that were basically just used for this specific reason. They enlisted 4 other personnel on board. An engineer, a reeferman, the guy who monitors the refrigerated containers, an ordinary seaman, and an able seaman. And so of the 22-person crew, 8 of them are involved. So it's a good chunk of the crew that's involved in this. There was a question about what the other 14 knew about this. And as I said before, it was believed that the cargo had been loaded in containers and put on board the vessel, but that's not exactly what happened. So the Gayane was carrying 11,000 containers. He was traveling west from Europe across the Atlantic through the Panama Canal and down the western coast of South America. So she's heading southward out of Panama. And as she's heading southward along Panama, this is where the cargo comes on board, the cocaine. They do not load it in the containers. Instead, they deliver it out to the vessel in duffel bags. And they use the stores crane on the stern to haul this material up. And then what they do is they crack open containers and stick it in the containers to basically ride for the rest of the voyage. The load was bound for Europe, but before the ship could head back to the Atlantic, it had to call in Peru and then head south to Chile. And when it turned back north and went back through the canal, it would go through the Bahamas and Philadelphia. Well, those containers, there was no containers on board that were going to go all the way to Europe. So what they had to do is crack into containers, put the cargo into containers, reseal them, put fake seals on them to get through customs in Peru and Chile, and then back in the Panama Canal and the Bahamas. But since cargo was coming off, they had to move this cargo multiple times. It wasn't just one load, stick it in a set of containers and don't move it again. They had to move it multiple times. And again, 20 tons of cocaine. I gotta tell you, it's a lot of cocaine. You're talking about multiple container loads there that you put in, because again, containers had cargo in them to begin with. So it wasn't like you had empty containers to put this in. So they were spreading this across containers, and they were met multiple times by these speedboats. It says here the Gayane was again met by speedboats the night on the northbound run between Peru and Panama. More cocaine was brought on board. So these guys are hoisting bags of this stuff on board, cracking open containers, putting it in. When the Gayane arrived in Philadelphia, they were met by agents of Homeland Security, the Customs and Border Protection, Coast Guard, state police from Pennsylvania and Delaware, and city police from Philadelphia. They obviously knew about this because they were met by a huge amount of people who come on board. They discovered 7 containers with suspicious seals, found 19.76 tons of cocaine in these 7 boxes. So why is it they knew about this? That's the really interesting thing. It's fairly obvious that as the containers were offloaded in the other ports and the tampered seals were discovered, this gave the highlight. Understand, the U.S. Coast Guard, Customs Border Patrol, and all these different agencies monitor the movement of containers, not just in the ports in the United States, but overseas ports. Ships that are heading to the U.S. are monitored. They're tracked. Human intelligence, artificial intelligence, you name it, are used to track containers. And when containers come off with these suspicious seals, and what would be interesting is the fact that the seals had been changed, but nothing had been moved in the containers. I mean, the cargo was all there. Nothing had been stolen and taken, done. That gives everybody the suspicion that something is going on here. And that's going to alert the officials. And that's what triggered Homeland Security, Customs and Border Patrol, and the Coast Guard to know about this. It goes on here a little bit, and it says an affidavit written by a Homeland Security investigator that is sealed but was leaked online shortly after the bus said, according to Tsiang, which is one of those people, on a previous voyage, Dersovic approached him and asked him to help with a job, which proved to be assisting Dersovic load large quantities of cocaine on board the vessel. For his assistance on the previous voyage, Tiasaga was paid approximately 50,000 euros. On this current voyage, Dersovic approached Tiasaga again. So they got people to kind of basically flip on each other. And when the agents came on board, they found a stack of 50 euro notes hidden in a carton of cigarettes in Tiasa's cabin. That's what obviously got him to basically be targeted by law enforcement. They obviously leaned on him and got him to basically roll over on all these other guys. But netting yourself nearly 20 million tons, 20 tons, not 20 million tons, that'd be a lot, 20 tons of cocaine on board in 7 containers. One of the problems that Homeland Security had on this one too is making sure that the other 2/3 of the crew weren't involved in this. This is a massive bust of huge proportions. Again, the 4th largest in the world, the largest in U.S. history. But it also goes to a larger image that I talk a lot about in my maritime security class is, do we even know what's coming in and out of the United States on a lot of these containers? We got tipped about this because of the way they did it with the seals. If they had been able to load that cocaine into a void on the ship or some area where they could just stow it and then just put it in a few containers, bust the seals, put in those containers, not get the track record of this going on. Now, they may have also been able to detect that small vessel going out to them Satellite intelligence can track small vessels. We see it with open source technology that tracks vessels all over the world today. So there may have been multiple indications here. We don't know because, again, Department of Homeland Security, Coast Guard, Customs and Border Patrol are not going to give up how they figured this out. But it's an impressive find, obviously, to do this. And the fact that you're talking about $1.3 billion worth of cocaine that was seized and grabbed, nearly 20 tons, is just an indication of the amount of cargo that is moved and transported through the United States and around the world. And again, what we know about and what we don't know about is a lot. I mean, there's no telling the amount of smuggling. Ironically, containers were created to prevent the pilferage of cargo, literally criminal elements. Cargo, when it was on pallets and open to everyone just in boxes, it wasn't unusual for stevedores, longshoremen, crew members to get a little bit of sticky fingers and have a little bit of pilferage, and shippers always planned on that. Now what you're seeing is the ability to smuggle goods into the country because of the volume involved. 2 to 3% of the containers coming in and out of the United States are thoroughly inspected. The other 98 to 97% are screened, but not thoroughly inspected. In other words, it would take too long to unpack every 20-foot, 40-foot box coming into the United States. And here's your indication with the MSC Gayane right here. Just an amazing story. And again, I'll link over to Greg Miller's story in Freight Forwarder for you, an American shipper, to take a look at it, along with the GCAP story there that has the Coast Guardmen boarding the narco sub and jumping on board. Just absolutely just a crazy endeavor to do that. But I thought I'd provide this story because it was a really interesting one. It's a little bit of a diversion from the supply chain disaster that's befalling us right now. So thought we'll talk about a drug bust, and not just any drug bust, but the largest drug bust in American history. So if you enjoyed the video, please share the video. Go ahead, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so you'll be alerted about new videos when they come out. Give it a thumbs up, and be sure to leave a comment on anything regarding the video that you liked or disliked. And again, we will continue to follow the world of shipping. We will follow unique stories in the world of shipping. Just posted a top 10 list of books to read regarding the world of ocean shipping. We did a video not too long ago on flag registry for it. We're talking about the issues with the upcoming Halloween season, and then the fact that there may not be as many costumes and smoke machines that you need on the shelves of Spirit Halloween come this All Hallows Eve. So until our next episode, this is Sal signing off.